Whispers in the shadows. The night began like any other. My parents had left for a weekend getaway, leaving me alone in our creaky old house. They reassured me that I would be fine, armed with a phone and a list of emergency numbers. Little did I know that this would be a weekend I'd never forget. The house seemed to come alive with eerie sounds as darkness descended. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, settling in the pit of my stomach, telling myself it was just my imagination. I settled in the living room, binge-watching movies to drown out the silence. As the clock struck midnight, an unexplainable chill swept through the air. The temperature seemed to drop, and I shivered despite the warmth of my blanket. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, like a distant murmur carried by the wind. Alone, but not lonely, it whispered, sending a chill down my spine. I dismissed it as a trick of my imagination, a byproduct of being alone in the old house. Trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, I turned up the volume on the TV, hoping the noise would drown out the strange whispers. But the more I tried to ignore them, the more insistent they became. I decided to investigate, convincing myself that it was just the wind playing tricks on me. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously moved through the dimly lit corridors. The shadows danced on the walls, creating eerie shapes that seemed to watch my every move. As I reached the hallway, the whispers grew louder. This time, they seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, as if the house was trying to communicate with me. I pressed my ear against the cold surface, straining to understand the words. Alone, but not lonely, join us. The air turned icy, and a feeling of dread settled in my chest. I stumbled backward, my flashlight flickering. That's when I saw them shadowy figures moving in the periphery of my vision. They darted from room to room, just at the edge of visibility, disappearing when I turned to face them directly. Terrified, I retreated to the living room and barricaded myself in. The whispers persisted, now forming coherent sentences that echoed in the stillness of the house. "We've been waiting for you. You're not alone. Join us." I clutched my phone, contemplating calling the police, but fear paralyzed me. The shadows continued to move, converging on the living room. I felt a cold presence in the room, an otherworldly force that seemed to seep through the walls. The whispers became a cacophony, drowning out my thoughts. I closed my eyes, desperately hoping it was all a nightmare. When I opened them again, the room was plunged into complete darkness. The only sound was my rapid breath and the relentless whispers that seemed to come from within me. Suddenly, the whispers transformed into agonized cries, wails of despair that sent shivers down my spine. The temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath in the frigid air. The room felt crowded, as if unseen entities surrounded me. In a final act of desperation, I dialed my parents' number. But when they answered, their voices were distorted, echoing the same haunting whispers. The line went dead, leaving me in the suffocating silence of the house. I huddled in the darkness, surrounded by the unseen, and the whispers persisted into the night, a chilling reminder that, in that house, I was never truly alone. Echoes of solitude. The house stood silent, shrouded in darkness, as I navigated its empty corridors. My parents had left for a weekend getaway, leaving me alone in the looming mansion that had been in our family for generations. As the front door closed behind them, A chill settled over the air, and an unsettling feeling crept into the corners of every room. I tried to shake off the unease, convincing myself that it was just the unfamiliar quiet that unnerved me. However, the hollowness of the house seemed to amplify every creak and groan, turning each settling noise into an ominous whisper. I found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see a spectre lurking in the shadows. Night fell like a heavy curtain, and the house took on a life of its own. The soft hum of the refrigerator echoed through the empty kitchen, a stark reminder of my solitude. I retreated to the living room, where the only source of illumination was the pale glow of the television screen. The flickering images cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating a surreal tableau. As I sat on the sofa, a sudden realization dawned upon me. I was not truly alone. The house seemed to breathe, each exhale carrying the weight of forgotten memories and untold secrets. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, the unmistakable sound of someone pacing back and forth. My heart quickened, and I strained to listen, hoping to dismiss the noise as a figment of my imagination. But the footsteps persisted, growing louder and more deliberate. I mustered the courage to investigate, my footsteps echoing like a drumbeat in the silent house. The hallway stretched before me like an endless corridor, the walls closing in with each step. The air grew thick, and I could feel a presence lingering just beyond the edge of my vision. As I reached the source of the footsteps, the corridor plunged into darkness. I fumbled for the light switch, but the oppressive blackness seemed to resist any attempt to dispel it. Whispers whispered in the shadows, unintelligible words that slithered through my mind like serpents. A cold hand brushed against the nape of my neck, and I recoiled, the hairs on my arms standing on end. The whispers coalesced into a haunting melody, a lamentation that echoed through the hollow spaces of the house. A spectre materialized before me, its features obscured by a tattered veil. Hollow eyes fixed on mine, and a mournful wail escaped its ethereal lips. It was a presence from the past, a ghostly remnant of a time forgotten. I stumbled backward, the walls closing in around me. The house seemed to warp and twist, its architecture contorting into nightmarish shapes. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath as I gasped in terror. The ghostly figure reached out, its fingers trailing shadows that clung to my skin like a sinister shroud. I fled through the labyrinthine corridors, the house itself becoming a malevolent entity intent on consuming me. Doors slammed shut behind me, trapping me in an ever-shifting maze. The air resonated with the anguished cries of the spirits that haunted the ancestral home. In the pitch-black darkness, I finally stumbled into the sanctuary of my room. I barricaded the door, but the malevolent whispers persisted. The house pulsed with a malevolent energy, its very foundation a conduit for the echoes of the past. Alone in the suffocating silence, I realized that I was not the sole inhabitant of this house. It harbored the lingering souls of those who had come before, and in the solitude of the night, their voices rose from the shadows to reclaim the living. The shadows of solitude. The night hung heavy over the old Victorian house, as I settled in for a weekend of solitude. My parents had left for a distant family emergency, leaving me alone with only the creaks and groans of the ancient structure for company. The flickering light from the dying fireplace cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, giving life to the stillness that enveloped the house. As the clock struck midnight, an unsettling chill crept through the air. I told myself it was just the wind, but the echoing footsteps in the hallway told a different story. My heart quickened as I strained my ears, trying to convince myself that it was merely my imagination playing tricks on me. Yet, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap persisted, drawing closer with each passing moment. I mustered the courage to investigate, my footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. The old floorboards groaned beneath me, adding an unnerving symphony to the mysterious sounds that filled the house. The air seemed to thicken with every step, as though the very walls were closing in on me. Reaching the hallway, I found nothing but the oppressive darkness and the looming silence. I scolded myself for letting my imagination run wild, and turned to retreat to the safety of my room. But just as I took a step, a shadowy figure materialized at the far end of the corridor. My breath caught in my throat, as the dim light revealed a gaunt face, eyes hollow and fixed on me. Frozen in terror, I watched as the figure glided towards me, each step slow and deliberate. Panic set in as I realized there was no escaping the impending encounter. The figure's movements were eerily synchronized with the pulse of my own heartbeat, creating a macabre rhythm that echoed through the haunted halls. In the feeble light, I recognized the figure as a spectral reflection of myself. Its eyes mirrored the fear that gripped me, and its movements mimicked my own. The doppelganger drew closer, its outstretched hand reaching for mine. I recoiled, but it was as though an invisible force bound us together. As our fingertips met, a surge of frigid energy coursed through me, sending shivers down my spine. Images of a forgotten past flashed before my eyes, moments of loneliness, despair, and heartache. The apparition seemed to feed on my darkest memories, growing stronger with each passing second. Desperation overwhelmed me as I struggled to break free from the spectral connection. I could feel the life force draining from me, the room closing in on us. The air became thick with the anguish of 1,000 souls, their silent screams echoing through the corridors. Summoning the last ounce of strength, I wrenched my hand away. The doppelganger recoiled, its hollow eyes narrowing in resentment. With a guttural moan, it dissipated into the shadows, leaving behind an unsettling stillness. Alone and breathless, I stumbled back to my room, the echoes of the encounter lingering in the air. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb of forgotten sorrows. As I huddled in the flickering light of the dying fireplace, I couldn't shake the feeling that the spectral presence still lingered, watching and waiting for the next unsuspecting victim to be consumed by the echoes of solitude.